Alright gamers, it's 12 AM where I am, and I just got done playing a CSGO, yeah, Global Offensive, not CS2, competitive match. I got 9 friends together, we hopped on and played a 5 versus 5 CSGO competitive game on DE Cache, a map that I have been wanting to play for over 2 years now, and we got on, we made it happen, we set up a server today, and it was so much fun. The muscle memory just all came back. It was beautiful, and so I'm going to show you guys how to set up a CSGO server today, so maybe you and your friends can play on, because I couldn't find a good guide on this. Like, I was setting it up today for the boys, and, you know, couldn't find a guide on the net, so here we are. We're going to talk about it. We had all the good stuff. We had the skin changer mods that let you... I was playing with an Orb Dragon Lore and a Butterfly Tiger Tooth. It was just such a blast. We're going to go over it. Almost a year ago to the day, and with pretty much the exact same haircut, I'm talking about, you know, February 29th, 2024, and the haircut is identical. I made a video where I showed how to host CS2 servers and Palworld servers on Linux with Steam CMD. So this is the prerequisite that I want to talk about. I'm not going to cover this in this video because I've already got one. Setting up Steam CMD. So Steam CMD is the actual thing that downloads and launches and configures all of these Steam server instances. And I, of course, have this video that I will link in the description. This is the only relevant part, this, you know, Steam CMD at 536. It'll show you how to install it. If you're on Windows, I'm a Linux guy, so this is a Linux tutorial, but you might have different instructions, but it's all here. After you install it, the steps should be exactly the same. So go check this video out, install Steam CMD. It takes, you know, about 4 minutes or so in this tutorial, and I'll see you back here when you're done. Now that you have Steam CMD installed, I'm just going to go ahead and log onto my server. So for reference, the server that I am going to be running is the same as in the video that I just linked you. It is a Debian Linux server, is going to be what I'm hosting my Counter-Strike Global Offensive server on. So now that you have Steam CMD installed, go ahead and launch its command line shell instance by just typing Steam CMD and hitting enter. Now, app update, actually before we do that, go ahead and type login anonymous so that you can actually download all of these game files. So once you're connected to the Steam API, you can do app_update and type in 740. Now, here's the thing, right? So app update is what is actually going to go ahead and download the files for the Steam game or Steam server that you are targeting. Usually, you might have noticed that the CS2 and previously the CSGO app ID was 730. So what we're actually going to be doing today is instead of downloading 730, which was then changed by Valve to be Counter-Strike 2, 740 actually downloads the CSGO beta dedicated server. Which is really interesting, actually, just as a side point, because Counter-Strike Source has a dedicated server, but previously, back in the supported days of CSGO, you would just download 730, and you could run the CSGO exe or executable in dedicated mode, where it would just launch a dedicated thing. But anyway, the 740 will give you the Counter-Strike Global Offensive dedicated server, so just go ahead and hit enter. Mine is already installed, but for you, it will start downloading and installing, and it might take a little while. I think it's around about 12 gigabytes or so. But anyway, once you have that installed, you can go ahead and hit exit. Now, your Steam directory, for me on Debian Linux, following the setup tutorial that I linked you, is in .local share Steam. And you can check all of the things that we've got here. So we've got Steam apps, and this will all look familiar to you if you've messed with Steam games before. Common, as you would expect. And here, we have a couple of things. So, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that is CS2. So that was downloaded in the previous video that I linked you. It's still called Global Offensive because, as I mentioned, they renamed app 730 from CSGO to CS2. So CS2 is essentially just like an update, functionally wise, for CSGO. But this is the interesting one here. Counter-Strike Global Offensive Beta Dedicated Server. This is where our app update 740 has downloaded. So if we go ahead and cd into that, Counter-Strike Global Offensive Beta Dedicated Server. So now we are in this folder, and you'll notice a couple of things. We have srcds Linux, srcds.exe, and I think this just stands for Source Dedicated Server. And so if you're on Windows, of course, you'll want to be targeting sourceds.exe. On Linux, like me, there's SourceDS Linux or SourceDS Run. And I think SourceDS Run is the sort of like cross-platform one, but double check that. I've made a little file here called start.sh. And what this does essentially is starts up the Counter-Strike Global Offensive server with all of the parameters that I want. So let me just go ahead and show you what is inside of that, because I think my beautiful face was blocking it in that last shot. But essentially, start.sh, and if you're on Windows, you would make something like start.bat. If you've set up any kind of other server before, this will be familiar to you. It is essentially just a shell executable script that you can run from your terminal like this. So all this does is call srds run, because I think that's the one that you want to be targeting, -game csgo, obviously we want to play csgo. Now, -tickrate 128, so that was one of the great things about this, we could play on 128 tick servers again. -debug gives you more info. svset Steam account, so we are going to be covering this very shortly, and why this is really, really important if you want your friends to be able to play. -port is self-explanatory, and there's a couple of other things in here, just setting up default things like game mode 0 I think is casual, the map is Dust 2, etc, etc. And that's that. So all you want to do is make yourself a start.sh or start.bat script with these sorts of options, and I will of course put them in the description, the options that I'm using, so you can sort of replicate exactly what I'm doing. But once you've made that on Linux, you have to mark it as executable, so you do chmod +x start.sh, and you should be good to go. Now I know that we are really excited to go ahead and start up our server with that brand new start.sh or start.bat we just created, but if you're on Linux, here's a note. I'm not sure if this is the same on Windows, but on Linux there are dependencies that you need to install before this thing will launch, because otherwise it'll just chuck errors at you all day long. So the first thing that you need to go ahead and do is add the 32-bit repository to your distribution. Now I'm on Debian over here. If you're on Ubuntu or Arch, it might be a little bit different for you, but there will be equivalents to all the commands that I'm running for your particular distribution. On Debian, this is the command that I need to run. So sudo dpackage add architecture i386. That will enable the 32-bit library support which Counter-Strike Global Offensive server requires. And after you do that, you would run sudo apt update. So this would be the full command. I've already done this, so I'm not going to go ahead and run the command, but of course I will have these in the description for you to copy and paste, because I know that's what you all want to do. So once you've run that, the dependencies that you want to go ahead and install are these ones here. Now, if you're on a different distribution, you'll have to find and map the equivalent packages to what your distribution is shipping. It should be fairly simple. They're all named relatively similarly, so go ahead and search your package repositories for that. But essentially, you want libcurl 32-bit version, ncurses libs 32-bit version, libtinfo. This was a big one. I got error after error after error about libtinfo. You want libtinfo 32-bit. You want lib32 standard. You want lib32 GCC. Those are the libraries that you want to use. And now GCC is important because I was getting another error related to GCC if it tries to use the GCC that the Counter-Strike Global Offensive beta ships with. So now I'm going to show you what file you actually have to delete in order to get this thing to launch without showing errors. We're ready to do a test run of our server, and let me show you what happens if we try and launch it in its current state. Wow, what's all this about? So, server restart in 10 seconds, error in command file. What's this all about? Let's have a look through the log and find out. Push D not found, pop D not found, that's a little bit sus, but it looks like it's still beginning to start up. Failed to open libtier0.so. Here's the deal, guys. The version of libgcc.so that this ships with is not going to be compatible with modern distributions. So what we actually have to go ahead and do, and this file, as you can see, is the bin/libgcc. So if I go ahead and do an lsal, you'll notice I have this bin folder. So if I do bin libgcc, you'll see it's right here. And what you'll notice is that if I actually go ahead and, rename this one, and if I start my server again, you'll notice that it starting up normally because it's using my distribution's libgcc.so instead of the shipped one, which is incompatible. Now guys, in order to get !WS so you can change your skins at will, there are 4 things, count them, 4 things that we need to get. Sourcemod, Metamod, some weird thing called PTAH, and the actual weapon skin changer mod itself. So Sourcemod and Metamod are more like frameworks to allow these mods to even exist in the first place. And you need very specific versions for Global Offensive and the weapon skin changer mod in order for this to work. So the first thing you're going to need is a 1.13 version of Sourcemod. Now remember, you can get this for Windows if you're using Windows, or Linux if you're like me and you're using Linux. You can just go ahead and select this, and it'll start downloading the 1.13 Sourcemod. The second thing that you're going to need is Metamod. Now you also need a very specific version of Metamod. So go to Dev Builds, and then you're looking for, this is version 2.0, we're looking for version 1.12. So go ahead and click on version 1.12 of Dev Builds over here, and you can download for Windows or for Linux again. So because I'm on Linux, of course, I will be downloading the Linux version. But yeah, you need version 1.112, otherwise this will not work. The next thing that we need is this thing called PTAH. What does it do? I actually have no idea. It's just a main dependency for the weapon skin changer mod. So go ahead and select from here. I'll give you the link in the description, of course, but the latest release was April 8, 2023. Highly doubt this is going to get updated again for CS2, but anyway, you go ahead and download for Linux or for Windows, whatever the one for you is. I am downloading for Linux, so I will go ahead and do that. Here's the fun one. So we can go to this weapons and knives repository over here, go to releases. The latest release was on April 26, 2023, and we're going to download version 1.7.8. It doesn't matter which operating system you're using here. This weapons for version 1.7.8 will work for both Windows and Linux. So here's the thing, guys. You need this in order for people to actually be able to join at all. No lobby reservation. What does this do? It is exactly as it says. It allows players to connect to the server directly without a lobby ID from Steam. Because CSGO is no longer supported, Steam will no longer give you a lobby ID, so you need this plugin in order for players to connect. I tried connecting, my friends tried connecting without this, it just didn't work, it kicked you off. So this was the fix, and specifically, this fork by Eldora, or however you pronounce the name, because the original Vans 666 did not get updated for a game data update, and this person has kindly forked it and gone ahead and done that. So to get that, there's no releases published, so you can just go ahead and hit code and hit download zip file. I've got this folder here that we're just going to extract all of these zip files into, and then we're going to copy them into the server directory. So the first thing we want to grab is open up Sourcemod, and then these add-ons and CFG, copy these folders over onto this folder that we're making now. Then grab the ones for Metamod. You'll notice there's an add-ons folder, it'll do the same thing, so move that in there and they should merge together. So you've got Sourcemod and Metamod in here. Now the next thing that we want to grab is this Linux-1, which is PTAH, and you can grab add-ons. If you downloaded it for Windows, it'll probably just be called Windows, right? We're just installing these 5 things that you downloaded. Then you can grab the weapons, and you'll notice that this is add-ons and CFG as well. So all you have to do is grab these 2 folders, pop them in there. And then finally, we're going to do no lobby reservation, which arguably is the most important one out of all of these, because without it, you won't even be able to connect in the first place. So this will be inside this CSGO folder. Expand that out and you've got add-ons. So just expand add-ons into this folder as well. So now we've built up all of these, folders with all the things that we want. We're going to copy these into our server directory. Over here on the right, I have my remote server. That's just how I've got it set up. This is my little Linux workflow. Yours might be different, but you'll want to gain access to your remote server or wherever you're hosting the Counter-Strike Global Offensive server and navigate to your directory. Now, you might have to, depending on your workflow, SCP or otherwise use FTP to get these folders across. But either way, just get it such that you're in a position where you can copy these folders to your game directory. So once you're in your game directory, go to CSGO, and you'll notice I have these folders, add-on and CFG. You won't have these. So go ahead and copy these folders into your CSGO directory. I've already got them, so I won't bother. Now, in order to get the weapon skin changer to work, you have to modify some config options. So if you go to CFG, if you go to add-ons and then Sourcemod, and then configs, and then core.cfg, and open that up. This is the config for Sourcemod. Now, the first thing that you are going to want to have to change is follow CSGO server guidelines. You'll have to change this to no. Now, the reason for that is because Valve explicitly took a stance against skin changes in-game, and they previously in the past issued game server token bans. That's not the same thing as a VAC ban. Game server token bans, basically it means your account and any linked accounts with the same phone number can't host CSGO servers anymore. So, disable this at your own risk, as it says. I've heard that they don't issue bans anymore, but hey, it is what it is. But it's worth it, in my opinion, because I want to play with my dragon lore. So, yeah, follow CSGO server guidelines, change that to no. And also, up here, blocked bad plugins, you'll also have to change this to no. As far as I'm aware, the plugins are not malicious, they're all open source, so that's a good sign, right? But it needs to, it needs to load these plugins or something, otherwise it's not going to work. I read it on the GitHub issues, it's a known thing, just change it to no. I think it's fine, but yeah, you'll want to containerize your server anyway. Mine's in a VM, so it's okay. Those are the two things you're going to want to change. Save that, and you're done. Okay, gamers, so I've taken out of my start.sh that set Steam account thing that I showed you before, and I'm going to show you exactly why that's really important. So if you just launch your start.sh executable, it'll start loading up. And now that it's loaded up, you can see we get this message here. No Steam account token was specified. Logging into anonymous game server account, connections will be restricted to LAN only. This is why that set Steam account thing is really important, because if you don't have this, your friends won't be able to connect unless you're all on the same local network, and obviously that's never going to work out. Grab open your web browser and go to this URL. I will of course have it linked in the description, and it's present in the server logs if you noticed that. Now, all you have to do here, once you're down, is log into your Steam account, which you can do up here on the browser, and you'll be on this page here. Create new game server account is down the bottom here. Then it'll say app ID of the base game, 440 for TF2, 730 for CSGO. This should be updated to CS2. They have not updated it on this page. But funnily enough, even though we're using the dedicated server 740, 730 is still the game token that you want for CSGO. So what you want to go ahead and do is enter in 730 down here and hit create. Now that you've done that, you'll see your token appear down here, and you want to go ahead and copy and paste that, and we'll be putting it in our start.sh. That's all you have to do on this particular page. Now that I'm back in my text editor editing the start.sh that I created earlier, I'm going to add after debug, and this doesn't have to be after debug. I don't think the order particularly matters, but essentially you want to do plus sv underscore set Steam account, and of course this will all be in the description, and then you paste in verbatim, caps and all, that token that we just generated before. And that's it. All you have to do is go ahead and write that. And if you start up your server now, you'll notice that it opens it to LAN. I'm not going to show you it starting up because my token will probably get leaked, but I'll skip right to the end where I can show you the end result. Bada bing, bada boom. Oh, it actually senses my token for me. That's nice. But you'll see here on this little line here, logging into Steam game server account with logon token, and then down here it'll say connection to Steam server successful, give you a public IP address, and that means that your friends can now use that public IP address to connect to you, provided you have port forwarded the server on your router. And I'll show you which ports you need to port forward and enable in your firewall in the next section. We're over here on the Valve Developer Community website for the Source dedicated server, which is what we're setting up. This applies to all Source games, including Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Now, connectivity is the section that we're interested in. You are going to have to, number one, allow the ports on your computer's firewall so that even LAN computers can connect to it. And then you're going to have to port forward these ports on your router to allow your friends to connect to it. So here we can see the ports that we need to allow on our firewall first, and then port forward. 27015, TCP UDP game transmission. This is the main one. And you'll notice that I actually did change this in my config with -port. I changed it to 27017. That's just because I run multiple Source game servers and I want to assign them all different ports. And 27017 is what I chose for Global Offensive. But if you are just running a CSGO server, 27015 is the default port. You need 27020 UDP for Source TV. I'm not sure if GoTV is still a thing that actually works. I remember that way back in the day, like in 2016, I was a kid and I was watching majors and stuff on GoTV, but these days it's all about Twitch. I don't even think CS2 has an equivalent of GoTV. So maybe this one's not so necessary, but this one definitely is, the client port. So 27005 is the client port, and then 26900 is the Steam port. And I'm fairly certain that this is what actually allows you to log on to the Steam game servers and get things back and forth and such. But anyway, these ones are what we need to do. So 27015, or your equivalent, like me if you're using 27017 or similar, 27005, and 26900 are the main important ones. I don't think Source TV is that important anymore. The setup that I'm running here on my server is exactly the same as what I posted in my how to set up a Linux server from start to finish video. It's Debian and it uses UFW, uncomplicated firewall, as the firewall. So for me, the commands that I need to run are these. Now, if you're using a different firewall or a completely different operating system, the process will be different for you, but the steps remain the same. So the first thing I want to do is UFW allow 27015. I've already got the rule, of course. And then I can do the same thing for /UDP, because remember, the source dedicated server needs both TCP and UDP of 27015. Then you can do the same thing for the client port, which I believe was UDP. So that is 27005 UDP. You can go ahead and allow that. And the Steam game client connection is 26900. I'm just going to make a note that I'm not going to be teaching you how to port forward in this video because every router is different, and it would be very, very silly of me to show you port forwarding on my router when you will have a completely different one with a completely different process. So you will have to look into what it is for your router, but these, in any case, you want to replicate this firewall setup that we just did. You'll want to port forward 27015 or your custom port of your choice on TCP and UDP. You'll want to do 27005 on UDP and 26900 on UDP as well. And with that, my friends, we can start the fun. Load up your server and I'll show you connecting to it in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. We're here in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Isn't this UI just so nostalgic? I mean, it's the Panorama UI. It's not the original that I was around for the original UI, so that's more nostalgic, of course. But, you know, it's been a couple years. This is still a nostalgic feeling, and hearing the CSGO music is really nice as well. I've got the music kit on CS2 for CSGO music. But anyway, open up your dev console and type connect, and then put in your server's local IP address. We're just going to test the local for now. And if you've specified a custom port, put a colon, and then put in the custom port. So for me, that's 27017. Hit enter, and you will start loading in to your CSGO server. Now, I was actually global elite in CSGO. This is a little trivia fact about me, guys. I loved CSGO. I loved the music, the atmosphere, the vibe. It was so great. But the Linux port for CS2 has been pretty poor. Like, it's been full of performance issues, micro stutters everywhere. The performance is just not there. The game just doesn't feel smooth. So when I'm thinking, you know, like I was global elite in Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and then for me to get back into CS2, it just didn't feel right. It just didn't feel right at all. So, you know, here we are in CSGO, and playing CSGO again, it really helped me rediscover like what the game should feel like, and CS2 was just not it. And you'll notice here I've got my butterfly knife lore, so I've got the whole like WS thing enabled. But yeah, like Global Offensive was just such a good running game. The FPS counter here in NetGraph is at like 200. It actually goes up to 400 and it's stable at 400. It's just because I'm recording that there's a bit of an FPS issue here. But yeah, that's... Oh man, and Cache, it's just such a good map. I'm going to end the video here on Canals, which is another sort of forgotten map in Counter-Strike now that CS2 has come out, and it doesn't look like it's going to be added anytime soon. This was such a great map to play just in casual with my friends. We played it all the time. It's very popular over here in Oceania, the region. So yeah, lots of fun on this map. And you know, like the muscle memory just comes right back. Like I remember all the angles. I remember all the spots to peek at. Everything. It just comes right back. It's really magical. And it's just so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you're keen on playing CSGO. yeah, it's just so nice that we're still able to have fun with this stuff. It's just a shame that the community is not really there anymore for maps like these and stuff like that. But it is what it is. Anyways, see you later, guys.